All right, June 11th on the pump fake, making our way around the NFL as we inch closer to mandatory minicamp starting, and then obviously a month away. Training camp. Jared Bailey with you as always, USA Today, joined today by my good friend Matt Verderame to talk AFC West. What's going on, buddy?
How you doing?
I'm doing. It's fair weather today in Pittsburgh. We got 67 degrees. It's beautiful, just beautiful. Can't complain.
Yeah, it's like 70 something out here. I just spent like 3 hours outside, so it was nice.
Yeah, if we stay in this realm for a little bit, that would be terrific. But AFC West, I think looking around the division, man, it's pretty cut and dry. This is basically the AFC East in the 2000s, the AFC South in the 2000s, where okay, it's going to be the Colts and everybody else. It's going to be the Patriots and everybody else. Now it just feels like okay, the AFC West is the Chiefs, and then everybody else is duking it out for second. That's just I don't know. That's what it feels like as of right now.
I gotta tell. I agree with most of that. I don't even think it's a duking it out for second. Like to me, like the Chargers are like clearly the second best team in the division.
Yeah.
Harbaugh is going to be a big difference maker in the sense that he's not going to lose them games like Staley did. Staley was good for 3 or 4 games every year. You watch the game, you just went, my God, he is just costing them that game. Now the fun thing will be is if Herbert still can't get over the hump in the next few years, then we're going to have a real fun conversation about Justin Herbert because now the coach isn't the problem.
Yeah.
But right now, like the talent around them is not there. And so I don't think they're going to be a 10-plus win team. I think they'll be a 500 team. Like I think the AFC West is pretty defined. Denver to me is the worst team. Denver is just
without a doubt. Denver's
the worst team in football, in my opinion. Like
I think it's a toss up between them and the Giants. Like those are the two teams that I'm looking at as like those will be one of them will have the number one overall pick.
Let's not sleep on the Panthers for a second straight year. Who I mean, I like what they did in the offseason, but like none of it matters if Young can't play.
Sure.
So, but that being said, yeah, I think like Kansas City, if Mahomes is healthy for 17 games, that division's over. Like it doesn't matter what else happens. Not in terms of them winning a Super Bowl or something. Sure, a lot has to go right, but just in terms of just winning that division, anything else can happen. And as long as Mahomes is healthy, they'll win, 11 games and they'll win the division.
How much do you make of the outside noise that's been going on in Kansas City this offseason where, it seems every day we're changing the sign. Okay, zero days since Chiefs arrest or anything like that.
I mean, honestly, I don't think it's going to matter. Like I think it'll matter with Rice, because he very well might get suspended. They're used to this. They do every offseason. The Chiefs have 3 guys who are in trouble, and I mean, Frank Clark was suspended for them, and Charles Mena, who was suspended before he played a down for them, he was suspended for 6 games. Willie Gay was suspended in the middle of the season a couple of years ago for throwing a vacuum cleaner through a wall. Like, I mean, Tyreek Hill's off-field issues have cropped up. Kansas. He was never suspended, but there was a whole investigation prior to the 2019 season that ended up not being filed charges. But they're used to this. Every year,
Hunt stuff from a few years ago.
What's that?
The Kareem Hunt stuff from a few years ago too.
Yeah. I mean, they live in this space. Like this is what they do. They bring in talented guys, and then they deal with all the off-field nonsense. I mean, I think the only one that might affect him is Rice, just because he might actually physically miss games. But beyond that, like, look, they would never say this publicly for very obvious reasons. They don't care. They do not care. It doesn't. They'll even look at the Rashee Rice thing, and they would. I'm sure, and I don't want to say that they've said this to me because it haven't, but I'm sure privately they would tell you. So what if he's out the first 6 to 8 weeks of the year? Who cares? What do we care? We're gonna be 6-2. And he's going to come back, and then we're going to go, 8-1 the rest of the way. And all they care about, are you there in January? That's it. As long as you're there in January, they're good. I mean, Xavier Worthy this year, they're not going to care what he does the first 10 weeks of the year. Like they're going to ramp him up, put him in little packages, and a little slip screen here, and go route there, and then all of a sudden, like go look at Rashee Rice's snap count numbers last year. They just exploded around Thanksgiving. Like that's what they do. They don't care. They know they can win 1 million games with Mecole Hardman and Justin Watson at receiver. They don't need the rest of these guys until crunch time.
You and I have had this conversation plenty of times before where it's, they don't necessarily like they want to win these games, but like when it's week 9, man, like they know that their season doesn't start until January, where they're like, okay, cool. If we win, awesome. If we lose, that's okay. We'll make up for it. We'll be fine.
Right. I mean, if you watch them every week, and I've watched them every week for 30 years,
Mhm.
they absolutely have games where they just go into the game as a team, including the coaching staff, and they're basically like, "Look, this is our B game plan, and we're not going to show you anything. We're going to treat this like an exhibition game from a play
Mhm.
calling standpoint. And if you beat us, cool, that's fine." I remember specifically a game in 2022. They played the Bengals in Cincinnati. It was late in the year. It was in November, I believe, late November. They played them. They had a couple game lead on them for the 1 seed. They play him, and Spagnuolo, who is known for being very complex and the defense is very exotic, they did nothing but rush 4 and play cover 2 the entire game. Nothing. I mean, didn't change up one call, no crazy blitzes. And Burrow just lit them up. And they lost the game 27-24. They lost the game, frankly, because Kelce fumbled the ball. They probably would have still won.
Yeah.
But they just weren't going to show them anything because they figure, hey, we see you down the road. And what do you know? 2 months later, who's coming to Arrowhead for the AFC title game? And they lit Burrow up like a Christmas tree in that game because they sat on it. They waited on all that stuff. Like early on this year, their first 2 games were Baltimore and Cincinnati. They love to win, but they're not going to unload the clip. They're just not. They're going to show you 50% of it. And they're going to sit on the rest of it knowing that, hey, we might see you in January. And it's worth more to have it in our back pocket.
And in terms of, we talk, Kansas City's the clear front runner. We know that. We know why.
Right.
But the Chargers, they do intrigue me a little bit. I liked the Harbaugh hire. I rolled my eyes at the Greg Roman hire after that. And then you look at their current receiver room. I mean, they're one injury away from calling you and I about lining up in the slot. Lad McConkey could be fun, but Josh Palmer, he's fine. Quentin Johnson is not. Obviously, they drafted him in the first round, and he did next to nothing. I'm concerned about what the offense is going to look like with that coordinator. That defense still has holes as well. Obviously, Harbaugh brought Jesse Minter's defensive coordinator from Michigan with him. I'm with you, though, in terms of the Chargers being maybe a 9-ish win team that can be in the wild card hunt, but I think that's probably their ceiling for this season.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I think that's about what I would say about them. I mean, look, they do play a last place schedule, so that helps them. And they play the Raiders and the Broncos 4 times. So, I mean, theoretically, 3-1, something like that. So the Chargers have a low ceiling because I just don't think, like against really good teams, what are they going to do against you? They just don't have the horses offensively. I don't care how great Herbert is. They have nobody. Like they had no, Lad McConkey and Quentin Johnston. And no, it's not moving the needle.
Right.
So I think offensively they're just so limited. And defensively, like we know Bosa's not playing 17 games. And Derwin James Price playing 17 games. And Khalil Mack, God knows if he's healthy for 17 games.
Plus, Khalil Mack is also getting, what is he, 32?
He's like 47.
He's old.
I think he's like 34. So, and look, he's coming off an amazing year. But it's just at some point here, like the problem with the Chargers is the same thing every year. Every year they're hurt. Every year they're missing a million guys. I was one that I thought they might move off Bosa this offseason. I thought they might trade him.
I mean, yeah, they had those 4 guys with Allen, Williams, Bosa, Mack.
Right, they moved off.
And they moved off the 2 receivers. So it was like, okay, that's a bold strategy.
I would have kept Allen and gotten rid of Bosa. Personally.
That would have been my strategy. I think that would have made the most sense.
Look, it's going to be interesting. But to your point about Roman, like, do they turn this into a team where they're trying to ground and pound the ball? Because I got to tell you, if that happens, then I'm out on them being anywhere near a 9-win team.
Sure.
Like, if they're going to take the ball out of Herbert's hands, and this is going to be the Gus Edwards experience, not great.
They brought in just a bunch of former Ravens that happened to play with Greg Roman. Okay, J.K. Dobbins, you can come on over. Gus Edwards, sure, why not? Come on in. It's
just, I mean, look, I think the Chargers are going to be one of those teams that, like, any given week they can win a game, but like they're inconsistent. I think in the AFC as a whole right now, I don't think the conference is as good as it was a year ago. I think the AFC West is bad. Like the Chiefs are obviously great, but the rest of that division is not good. I think the Chiefs will win that division by December 1st. Like mathematically, I think they'll win the division by December 1st. I think there's a world where the Chiefs are like 10-2 going into December, and nobody else is within 5 games of them.
I saw you talking about that. I think it was either on your podcast or it was on Arrowhead Attic, where you're like breaking down their schedule. And you think that they can win 14 games?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Because when you look at it, like last year, I think I picked them to win 13. They won 11. The year prior to that, I picked them to win 13, I believe, as well. And they won 14. The reason being, the division's not good.
No.
Like, now I'm not going to pick them to sweep the division, but like, let's say they go 5-1, which I think is probably reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing the NFC South. And the Bucs game is at home on a Monday night, so they're going to be ready for it. Yeah. The Saints game is at home on a Monday night. Carolina is atrocious. And Atlanta's on a short week on Sunday Night Football. And we know what Cousins is like on primetime games. And that game is in Atlanta, where the Chiefs are going to have half that stadium filled. Like, I think they're going to win every game in that division. At the Niners, fine. Let's say they lose that game. They could certainly win if they could lose. Like, let's say they lose it. So if you do the math on that, and that's 9-2.
Sure.
They play the AFC North. Not an easy division, but like they get the Bengals and the Ravens at home.
I gotta tell you, man, I think they win both of them.
So do I. The year. I mean, plus usually they start well. They just do. Not always, but usually they start well. And the Bengals do not. I have no idea what you're getting from Burrow.
Last 2 years, they've really limped out of the gate.
And the Ravens, nobody talks about the Ravens. The Ravens have missed like the headline somehow with this. They have a ton of turnover.
Yeah, a lot of it.
They have 60% of their offensive line's new. There's no Beckham. There's no Duvernay. There's no Queen. There's no Stone. There's no Clowney. There's no Mike McDonald. Like, and their first test is at Arrowhead.
Good
on
luck.
A banner dropping night. Good luck to you. I think they're going to win those games. I think with Pittsburgh and Cleveland, they'll split them. Whatever. Pick however you want to split them. I think they'll beat Houston at home on a short week. I think Houston, if they played them in Houston, I may pick Houston, but they're at home and it's late in the year. It's going to be cold as hell. Like, Stroud's never played at Arrowhead. I'll take the Chiefs there. And then they play the Bills on the road, which normally I would, frankly, like every year, the last couple of years in the regular season, I've picked the Chiefs to lose to the Bills in the regular season. I don't think they're going to lose to them this year. I just think the Bills are in a little bit. I still think the Bills are going to win the division, for the record. I just think a little bit of a transitional year. I think the Chiefs will win that game. But yeah, I think they're a 13-14 win team. I think they're going to be the top seed in the AFC. And if they are, they got a real shot to three-peat.
All right, so let's talk about. I mean, we don't have to talk about the Raiders or the Broncos because we both agree that they're both horrible, and there's nothing really. We don't need to think piece. Oh, maybe the Raiders can actually win 10. No, they can't. They're going to be bad. So let's talk about the closest contenders to the Chiefs in the AFC. You brought up Buffalo. Obviously, Cincinnati's going to be there. Houston. I think those are probably your 3 biggest ones.
Yeah. If I power rank the AFC in terms of who I think can win the Super Bowl, I would go with the Chiefs on their own tier. At this point, I think they just earned that.
That's
spot.
Fine. Yeah.
The second tier for me would be Cincinnati and Houston. Those are the 2 biggest contenders, Tom. And then after that, Baltimore, Buffalo. I don't even think there's anybody else. I mean, maybe
I agree.
Want to the Jets or Miami or somebody on there, or Jacksonville. I would have them in their own tier. I'd have those teams on like their own. Like they could be contenders. They could go 7-10. Like I just finished writing a feature about Tua Tagovailoa and what the Dolphins should do, and I asked a lot of people in the league, and I am waiting for the first person to say, I think he's great. I mean, so yeah, I really don't pick repeat champions very often. I just think it's so hard to do it.
Yeah.
And obviously a three-peat, like no one's ever done it in the Super Bowl era, at least completely in the Super Bowl era. I really think if they're healthy, they're going to do it. I just think they're better than everybody else. I think, when you think about them, like forget what they're going to look like in September. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
By the end of the year, if they have reasonable health, when they trot out their 11 personnel, it's going to be Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, and Isaiah Pacheco, with one of the best interior offensive lines in football and Patrick Mahomes. And Andy's calling the plays. And then defense, you have a defense that was top 3 in the league last year. Granted, lost L'Jarius Sneed, but has Tranquil and Bolton and Chris Jones and Karl Loftus and Amenahu and Trent McDuffie and Justin Reed. And it's just you just look at them and you're like, if that team's healthy, it's going to take somebody going in there and playing an absolutely out of body experience type of game. And they're going to have to not play well because if they play well, they're probably going to win anyway. I just don't like who in the AFC. I mean, maybe you disagree. Is there any like who's the team in the AFC that you're like, I think they can go toe to toe with them?
Team wise, I mean, I don't know if they're maybe Cincinnati just because they've done it before
Right.
and they've proven that they can go in.
Yeah.
And like Burrow and that core, I think there's also a sense of like, hey, it's now or never, like with the Bengals, because Higgins is going to be gone after this year. Trey Hendrickson could be gone after this year. Like they're going to have a lot of turnover.
Which, by the way, makes them very interesting this year. Like,
I agree.
Hendrickson has said publicly he wants out of there. They're not going to pay him. Higgins has said that. Higgins is not showing up at the minicamp.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see what happens with Chase. But, like, there's a real world where that thing goes sideways in a hurry. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to be very, very good. I just said, I think they're one of the two biggest contenders still.
Yeah.
But that is a weird dynamic. That is a very weird situation.
I agree. And I would like to think that they'll, like, if you're a guy like Higgins, I think you just kind of strap up and say, all right, one last shot at a bowl. I'm going to get paid next offseason. So be it. Same thing with Hendrickson. I mean, he's a tremendous player. I think both those guys are going to get the bag from somebody. But, I mean, you look at this team overall, like they got better on the back end too. They brought back Von Bell. They bring in Geno Stone, as you mentioned. I think defensively they're a little bit better than most people are talking about. And like I said, Burrow's gone in there and done it before. Nobody else has. As the resident Josh Allen guy, like I'd like to think Buffalo could still do it. I think that with a healthy Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard in the middle of the defense, they'll have a better shot at doing it. But they have some turnover in the secondary at safety that will be, they don't have Poyer, they don't have Hyatt anymore. It's going to be Mike Edwards, former Chief. Taylor Rapp got brought back. They drafted Cole Bishop out of Utah. So there's a lot of turnover there. And then obviously the wide receiver where they have 6 new guys there. Like that would be quite the feat if they're able to go through that much and still find a way to get it done. But until, it's proven that they can, I mean, that's going to be the narrative is like they can't. So I think that Cincinnati, just because they've proven that they can do it, I'm interested to see what Houston will look like with, year 2 of Stroud and D'Amico and adding Diggs. Right. But I think that those are the unquestioned for me is Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Houston. Like, honestly, man, I think Baltimore, you talked about the turnover and how it's not getting talked about. Like, that is a team where I'm just kind of like, what is there? Like, I understand Lamar's good, but there's really nothing else there that scares me.
Maybe we can run this back. They don't factor into me. I'm to the point. I know like the analytics people losing their minds over that every year. Look, sure. I'm sorry. They don't. Can I curse on your podcast?
Sure.
They don't win shit.
They don't.
Like, what are we? I mean, I'm so sick of people like, well, in the regular season, they've been the best. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Great. They're the Atlanta Hawks with Joe Johnson. Congratulations.
That's a shout. That's a good shout. I like that.
I mean, like, who cares?
They're Paul Millsap.
Yes. Like, congratulations. You're the Jazz. Like, I mean, at what point are you going to win a game that matters? Because you punked Houston, fair enough. Blew them out. Take nothing away from that. They beat the piss out of Houston. They played the Chiefs in their building in a game that, go look at the articles at the time. Everybody thought, they're going to win this game. They're going to handle the Chiefs. No problem. Tooney's out. Matabike is going to go nuts. All this stuff. The Chiefs went out and scored 2 touchdowns on the first 2 drives of that game, and they scared the shit out of Baltimore. I mean, you want to just plain as day say what it was. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Baltimore got freaked out in that game and completely came out of their game plan, and the Chiefs ate them up. And like, to me, look, there's no shame in losing to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. I'm not trying to make it out like they lost to like some knockoff BS contender, but
right,
you're at home. You're at home. You were the number 1 seed. The Chiefs last year were not a great team. They weren't. Now, They were by the end of the season, by the end of it all, like you could say, hey, look, they picked it up fine, but they were not a great team. That was the worst team Mahomes ever played on, and they somehow won the Super Bowl with it. But like, and it's not, sometimes when you criticize the Ravens, people take it inherently as like you're criticizing Lamar. And then like the fangs come out. It's like, look,
of course,
2 things can be true at once. If I had a vote last year, I would have voted for him as the MVP of the league. I thought he deserved it. I thought it was a weak MVP year, but I thought he deserved the MVP award. I thought he was the best player in the league last year at the most important position. You want to argue McCaffrey? That's fine. You can have that conversation. Allen, the last half of the year, I thought was the MVP. The first half of the year, for me, disqualified him from being the MVP. But the point is, I thought Lamar Jackson last year played really well. But Lamar Jackson in the playoffs has not played well. And to sit there and defend that is just stupid. It's intellectually dishonest. He has not played well in these playoff games. If you go back and look last year in the fourth quarter, they were in that game. He threw one of the worst interceptions you'll ever see.
Triple coverage in the end zone was hideous.
I mean, and look, 3 guys were ready to pick that ball off. I mean, if Deion Bush doesn't do it, 2 other guys would have done it. Like, it's one of the worst throws you'll ever see. And you can't sit there and go, well, he was let down by his defense. They were great in that game.
They were.
He had 17 points. They gave him that ball a million times over. I think Lamar's a wonderful player. He is a top 5 quarterback in the league for me. He is going to probably end up in the Hall of Fame. I have no problem with it. That being said, they as a collective in that era have pissed their pants in the biggest spots. And until that changes, like as much as I don't think Buffalo's a Super Bowl contender this year, because I think they are in a little bit of a transitional phase, I would pick them to win the Super Bowl before I pick Baltimore, because I have seen that team in big games have huge performances. Now, to be fair, my problem with the Bills in the playoffs has nothing to do with the quarterback. It has to do with their defense.
Yeah.
That defense has gotten lit up over and over and over and over by Mahomes and Burrow in playoff games. And to me, until that changes, like, why do I think any differently of you? But I would believe in the Bills more in a playoff game than I would in Baltimore, just based on recent history.
I agree with that. We can wrap it up here in a minute with this, but Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in this era, they've had a playoff game each against Buffalo and Kansas City. Yep. They scored a combined 13 points in those 2 games. Yep. Like, it's just not going to get the job done. And coming into this season, like, what was Lamar Jackson's biggest win against the Titans in the playoffs a few years ago?
Yeah,
like, I think that, and I did a feature on this for USA Today, I think that their Super Bowl window, their best chance to do it was this year. And in large part, it could be closed, at least for the foreseeable future, because of all the turnover that's happened. And like it, in terms of like, if you're a Chiefs team, if you're the Bengals, if you're the Bills, like if you see Baltimore coming into your building, like, yeah, you're going to take Lamar Jackson seriously, and you're going to take, guys like Roquan Smith seriously and Kyle Hamilton. But outside of that, man, they are a very top-heavy team. And they just don't scare me if I'm a Kansas City or, one of the other, great teams in the league.
I just look at Baltimore, and I think they're a very talented team. I think for the most part, they're a well-coached team, although last year in the playoffs, I have a lot of questions. I can honestly say when they were screwing around with Kelce and Mahomes in the pregame,
oh, yeah,
I was like, they're going to lose this game. Like, you could just see, I mean, this is one of those things like where the meme comes in and they're like a few moments later and like, you could just see it coming. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And what really though in that game, we can call it, what showed me more than anything that I just don't believe in Baltimore, and it showed me why I shouldn't. People will forget this or get lost to history. The Ravens committed 5 personal fouls in that game. The Chiefs committed 0. And a lot of them were just unnecessary roughness, late hit. Just stupid, ridiculous stuff because they got frustrated. Yeah. And the Chiefs showed the champions that they just sat there and took it. So that's great. You want to give us 15 yards? That sounds great. We'll take your 15 yards. We'll take a first down, and we'll just ram the ball down your throat. And like the Ravens over and over and over, quite frankly, that game just cheap shotted them, and the Chiefs just wouldn't respond to it. And I think that's the difference in playoff games sometimes. I mean, look, the Bengals could have gone to back-to-back Super Bowls. I'm not trying to single them out or anything, but Joe Osai, it's one of the dumbest penalties in NFL history.
Yeah.
Mahomes had both feet out of bounds, man. Like,
there was a legitimate discourse for, like, you remember that, like, 2 days afterwards, like, oh, that was a soft call. You can't call that. Do you remember?
The Bradbury call, that's a call you could sit there and really have an argument about. Yeah. The Osai penalty, he was halfway to his car. Like, I mean, what are you doing? That's one of those things. The second it happened, I was like, that's a personal foul. I didn't even think about, like, maybe it's not. I'm like, I couldn't believe he hit him. Like, in real time, like, that is one of the dumbest plays I've ever seen on an NFL field. But again, Osai's a young player. He's in the moment. Like, he knows better. He got caught up in it. But that's the experience factor of that. Like, I don't think Logan Wilson does that because he's been there. I don't think Trey Hendrickson does that. He's been there. And then you have the Ravens, who it's like a bunch of guys who had never been in that spot. And I think they panicked. Like, they just completely panicked as the game went on. that's why I do agree in totality. Is look, I think the Chiefs roll in the AFC West. I think they're the best team in the AFC. Again, the Bengals are the one team I give them a shot if they got to go in there to do it because they know they can do it. They've been there. They're not going to be intimidated by it. Even the Bills, as terrific as they are, every time they see the Chiefs in the playoffs, they go home. Like in the back of your mind, you're human. In the back of your mind, you're like, what's going to go wrong? What's going to happen? You're the Bengals. You don't have that in the back of your mind. You're like, we can beat this team. We know we can beat this team. So I think that gives them a huge advantage over the others.
Yeah, and even when Bass missed, when they brought Bass on for the field goal in the most previous playoff game, like even if he makes that, there was still plenty of time, and the Chiefs were rolling regardless. So, buddy, I always appreciate you. I know you got to get on out of here. What do you got coming on the written side of things?
Got a feature coming on Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins. What to do? I reached out to GMs. I reached out to front office executives. I reached out to defensive coordinators and said, tell me what you think. And the answers were very interesting. They were very interesting. So look for that. I believe it's going out on Wednesday. And then we're in the middle of our 32 teams and 32 days series. I'm covering the NFC. Gilberto Manzano has the AFC. So we're kind of writing out like little scouting reports about each team that they kind of give a best case scenario, worst case scenario, sleepers to watch, stuff like that. So hopefully people check them out.
Lovely stuff. And if you want some written stuff from me, NFL head coaches ranked worst to first, 32-1. That's on USA Today. And then coming out today, it is already out. The top 5 rookie quarterbacks, their stat projections. So go and read all of that. And then in the next week, the top 20 assistant NFL head coaches or assistant coaches in the NFL. So that'll be all on the USA Today side of things, buddy. I always enjoyed doing this with you. Talk to you again soon.
Take care.